Welcome back, sports fans. With WTF is Ed Sports Show. Truly a special guest today, an Olympian
Yeah.
of all things, right? Bryan Sosoo.
Sosoo.
Sosoo. Close, right?
Close.
Bryan, welcome to the show. I was very excited to get you on, and I know we've been kind of missing each other with the time lapses and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I can't even imagine. How far ahead is Milan?
Milan's 6 hours ahead. So for me, I'm back. I got back early or late last night, so I'm back on the East Coast. So happy to be home and back in New Jersey. But Milan's 6 hours. So was dealing with those time zones since November when we went on tour.
Does the jet lag affect you at some point? I know I went to Hawaii once, and I don't know if that's comparable.
Yeah.
But you're fast forwarding, right? You're going into another day ahead.
Yeah, so a little bit once we first get to Europe, but coming back, like I was able to go to sleep with no issues. I was up a
Right.
little bit earlier than I would like. I was probably up around like 4:30 this morning, just kind of like staring at the ceiling. And so I think that's where the effects, but was tired enough from the flight coming back, leaving at 9 a.m. and then landing at what was like 2 p.m. was like, all right, something's off here. But I was just on a plane for 9, 10 hours, but here
Yeah,
we
because
are.
you were there, what, there for 2.5 weeks, three
We were
weeks
there,
maybe?
so I was in Cortina for 3.5 weeks, but with bobsled and our regular season, we've been in Europe since November.
Oh, so you're really hitting the effects of
Yeah,
coming back
yeah,
and touring and then coming back and
and
then
then
just
being just
going.
kind of trying to decompress and reset a little bit back home for it.
So the biggest question I have for you, and maybe this is not a big transitional period, your expertise is track and field, is
Yeah,
running, right?
yeah,
How do you get involved? A kid from Wild Lake in Howard County.
yeah.
How do you get involved in bobsledding? Because I can tell you, lacrosse is champion here in Maryland.
Yeah, no, for sure. So for me, even I went to Reservoir High School, and even understanding that experience with the Gators, like a lot of the transition from sprinting to bobsled, it's a lot of pushing. And so when we think about what it takes to be a good pusher, it's speed, it's strength, and it's power. And so for me, being a sprinter and jumper, I had developed kind of those three things over time. And so being able to translate that into bobsled, which for me, I had heard and I was aware of the sport, but if you were to tell high school me that, hey, I was going to be a bobsledder, I'd be like, you probably have the wrong person. And then for us to say I was going to be an Olympian as well in the bobsled would be one of those things where like, yeah, you definitely got the wrong guy. But it all really started with the recruiting email from the high performance director, Kurt Thomas Savage, who was also a former Olympian and bobsledder. As they were recruiting, I think realistically probably for the 2030 games, but having gone to the rookie camp and have had some success, I was able to make the World Cup team my rookie year, and then make the World Cup a team again this past season, and really afforded myself the opportunity and earned the opportunity to compete at these past Olympic Games.
Wow. So it's all about who you know, who's sending emails, who's out there looking. Somebody's
Yeah,
always looking, right?
yeah, someone's always looking, and then I think with this sport in general too, they do a really good job at hosting recruiting camps and what they refer to as the Slide for Glory camps, and so it's a mix of a sprint, a throw, a jump, and then I think there's a few other events that they use to kind of test to just check overall athletic fitness, and then from there they normally will invite people to rookie camps, and from there it's a lot for folks to get to rookie camps. Pushing is not the same as sliding, and so folks may
Right.
do a great job at pushing, but until they actually get into a bobsled, it's a completely different experience. And there's been folks that have been great pushers, but the sport of bobsled is not for them, and so they've decided to kind of go different ways. But we do a really good job as an organization recruiting and trying to get the name out there of bobsled, the USABS program, not only from a bobsled side of things, but from a skeleton side of things as well.
So you said you were on tour for an amount of period of time. Do you live with those guys? Do you sleep with those guys? There's
Yeah.
a breakfast, dinner, lunch. I mean,
Yep.
you're
Yeah.
locked in.
Yeah. When we're on tour, we spend pretty much all the time together, and it's for better or for worse. I think over time, just when you're spending so much time with people, it can create some tension in certain areas. But the group of guys that I was able to go on tour with, and also the ladies that we were on tour with this year, was an amazing atmosphere. The coaches made sure that we had the things that we need. We would rotate roommates every now and then so that folks weren't getting too tired of each other. And so it was just finding the space. But
Right.
when we think about our schedule as well, like we're constantly moving from place to place, but while we're also moving, we're spending a lot of times in cars. We're spending a lot of times in the garage getting sleds ready. We're spending a lot of time at the track for training sessions. So it's a lot, and we have time kind of throughout the day to,
Sure.
sometimes throughout the day to really just kind of go and explore the town and just like find our own space for things as well. And so it's a matter of like the experience you get on tour is the what you make of it, as well.
So now you brought up the whole bobsled thing. We saw something special. I think this Olympics we saw
Yeah,
the 2-person bobsled, and even a 1-person bobsled,
yeah.
and a 4-man bobsled, or woman too, women as well. What in a 4-man bobsled to be? Well, first of all, is it bobsled or bobsleigh?
It depends where you are in the world. So I believe where the founding of it, and when you think about the Europeans, they refer to it more as bobsleigh. And then for us, I believe here in the U.S., it's bobsled. But I've used both interchangeably, kind of throughout. I think it depends on what part of the world you're in.
Because I think us Americans get to the short of the point of the story, and we just go sled.
Sled, yeah,
So in the sled, and I think in the world of bobsledding, Cool Runnings was the forefront of
yeah,
really showing, what this is, right?
yep,
I'm sure people knew what it was, especially Europeans. But then you brought Disney made a movie, and they showed everything.
yeah,
So in a bobsled, what are your positions? Obviously, there's somebody, a pilot,
yep,
and then there's this guy and this guy and this guy. Can you kind of go into like the positioning and
yeah,
who has jobs responsibilities going
yeah.
down the track?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, when the first person in the sled's the pilot, and they're the one that's starting kind of the furthest point up on the sled when we think about the 4-man. And so and then you've got your 2 guy and our 3 guy for us in the US, or at least on the sled that I'm in. And the 2 and 3 is also so interchangeable depending on where you are and the coach and how you develop. But those are the 2 side guys. And when you think about the 2 side guys, they're probably the more powerful guys, not always the fastest guys on the team, because when you think about the sequencing of getting into the sled, you want to be able to, one, as a team, have that power off the line. You also want to be able to, from a size perspective, be in a world in which kind of stride lengths are also similar, because if you're striking the ice at the same time, you're creating force at the same time. And so those things start to matter and mesh together. And then you think about the 4 guy, which is the position that I slide in. Mainly, I also slide from the 3 spot at sometimes, but that's normally your fastest guy. And so when you think about what
Sure.
that position does, it's the person that's on the ice the longest, although it's a very split second longer than the others. It's kind of where you want to put your fastest guy. And for us, we also tend to put kind of our smaller guys at the brakes as well from an aerodynamics standpoint.
So they have to have the upper body strength to actually physically stop the sled if they had to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When you first got into a sled, was it like a push start, or did you guys actually go full board? We're gonna jump in this thing and go for a
Yeah,
ride.
yeah. When I first got on the sled up in Lake Placid last, I guess October, it was a full, hey, we're going. Here's what you need to know. Have you learned the track? Great. Make sure you pull the brakes and bring the sled to stop. And so it was a full set, back set, ready, start, sequence hit, and running down and seeing the timer go, and then getting in the sled and holding on. And so my first experience in the bobsled is really too was one where you can't prepare yourself for it in terms of what it's going to be like. Some folks will compare it to kind of a roller coaster ride, but then you have others like Jason Kelsey, who took a bobsled ride in Lake Placid with us back, or in Park City with us back in October, and it's like it. He thought it was going to be a roller coaster ride. It was nothing like a roller coaster ride, and there's nothing that prepares you for it at all.
Is it much scarier than a roller coaster? 'Cause that sled could go anywhere at that point,
That's, yeah,
right?
the sled can go anywhere. It's also part of the sport where I think the risk that you take in that sled being able to go anywhere is one of those accepted risks that you take, but it's also a manageable risk at times. And so when you think about
Sure.
the experience of the pilots, those guys have been doing it, and those guys and those women have been doing it for a number of years before they're able to get, especially at the World Cup level, to get to where they are. And so, even from a developmental side, you're focusing on the craft, you're meeting with coaches, you're doing track walks every day, sometimes multiple times a day, you're checking ice conditions and profiles. And so, you're learning all these components before you even get behind the sled. But even when you think about getting into sled, it's not something that you can take 15, 10, sometimes even 5 runs a day. Sometimes for us, you're getting 2 runs and that's a training session. So a lot of it's the mental reps that you're taking. It's learning the track. It's knowing where am I entering, where am I exiting, where am I going to feel the pressure, and finding a way to manage those things as a driver.
So, looking at some of your bio stuff, you were a Division 1 athlete. How does that prepare you mentally for this kind of rigorous? Because Division 1 is all over the country at any
Yeah.
point. Did that prepare you a little bit going into this when you were on world tour?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely prepared me a little bit, and I think a big portion of it was just kind of what it takes to perform at a high level. And so, a lot of the times, it's the work ethic, it's the time management, it's the attention to detail, it's the ability to be coachable throughout it. And so, being able to step and perform at a Division 1 level, and then also translate to this again when you think about the limited opportunities, and you think about performing at a high level like this, like you're good and you can be great, but there's also a lot of other people that are good and great. So it's about
Sure,
mastering your craft and also taking those things seriously and recognizing that anybody's position can be taken at any point in time, and it's
sure,
also your job. And if you're making the decision to be there, you also have to make sure that you're taking it seriously when you're around. And so those are all the things that being at Monmouth University and thinking about the coaching staff there with
sure.
Joe Compagni and Brian Hirschblom and Devin Barry and such and many others prepared us for in terms of the success that we were able to also have at in our conference level and on a national level.
So you can't always be like the Swice
Yeah,
movie reference for you.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
um, so are you still in touch with your high school coaches? Are you still in touch
Yeah,
with your college coaches? Like,
yeah.
what is their overall opinion of
They
how
are,
this is going,
yeah.
other than
They've
positive?
loved, yeah. My coaches have loved the experience. My high school coach Phil Rogers was at Reservoir High School, still is at Reservoir High School, and him and I stay in contact. And whenever they are able to come up for a track meet here in New York, I'll sometimes stop by and actually see those athletes compete. And then my college coaches have been in touch with me, and they stay in touch with me because those are just the relationships that I've built. They're always checking in with me. My coach Brian Hirschblom was at Monmouth University and then went over down to Philly to St. Joe's for a few years and is now kind of doing his own thing from a coaching and performance standpoint. But he's always been there in terms of making sure that I'm ready and I have what I need mentally. And so he and I exchanged a few text balls at the games of what
Sure.
the environment was going to be like, what the experience was possibly going to be like, and just making sure that I didn't get too overwhelmed with all the things that came with it, and to recognize that I had done the work and that the performance would come, and trying to find ways to kind of keep myself in the moment.
So you opened the door kind of in your last little bit there. The Olympic experience overall,
Yeah.
it's got to be, I mean, mind blowing,
Yeah.
right? You're with I don't know how many athletes from around the world. You're a very select few.
Hmm.
Did you tear up a little bit walking into those opening ceremony? Like, the world is now watching me.
Yeah. I think for me, going into the opening ceremony, not as much. That was kind of a moment of like I've made it moment, and just kind of proud of all the things that I have done and the sacrifices that myself, my wife, and my family have kind of made, and that I've had to make to get to where we are. And so it was kind of a more joyful moment getting through that. It wasn't until day two of our competition and right before that kind of final run, that more of the emotional side, and I was able to shed a few tears of, wow, I've been able to compete and train and put so much focus into this thing that I've been so passionate about for years, and this may be the last time of which I'm putting on a uniform, putting on a
Sure.
USA uniform at that, and being able to get a last athletic warm up for a competition versus kind of for my own kind of benefit or whatever it may be, and really taking that moment with those guys and saying like, wow, we've made it. Some of them will continue their journeys. I will be taking at least a year off before I kind of explore
Yeah.
whether or not France will be in the cards for 2030, just from how long I've been kind of in the sports world. But to have that moment and to think about lining up with those guys for the last time, getting on that hill and recognizing that we had done and we've continued to do, and we're about to do everything that we can to try to put ourselves in a position to kind of have our best finish at the games was definitely an emotional moment for me getting up there.
So speaking of family and your wife, my wife gets mad at me all the time when I take on too much. I coach too many teams
Yeah,
or do whatever else. This has got to be like the ultimate marriage test, right?
yeah,
This is how you figure out if she's the one or not. With all this, because you said you're away for so long and
yeah,
whatever else, has she been understanding, or is there frustration? And you don't have to dial into all of those
yeah.
emotions, but I got a feeling that at some point you guys cried together on the phone or
Yeah,
laughed together or whatever else.
yeah. No, Megan's honestly been my biggest supporter throughout this journey, and for me, she was also a former athlete, and we actually met at Monmouth University where she was a
Oh
pole
wow.
vaulter there, and so she understands kind of what it takes to give and what it takes from a training schedule. And she even on some of the days where I'm like, I don't really feel like training or going to the gyms, like it's gonna take you about an hour and a half, just go and get it done. Like you're not in Lake Placid for all this time and on tour for all this time and away for all this time for you to skip these things. And so she was definitely an accountability partner for me as well, and made sure that I was putting a mirror up to my own reflection when I was making some of the decisions that I've had. But she's been my biggest supporter, and being on tour, I definitely was tough. I think for both of us, just being away for so long, and I was fortunate enough to be able to come home for a few days between Christmas and New Year's before we had to go back again. But those few days aren't enough to get back, get accumulated, get back into a routine. And so now that we're back, we're kind of both have a moment of like, all right, let's get back into a routine and enjoy life together.
Do you feel like a stranger coming home from on the road? Everybody goes, "Oh, I would love to be these athletes'
Yeah.
lives," but you feel like a stranger in your home for a couple days, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's like for me, it's came home to a spotless apartment, and I came home with 5, 6 bags after being gone for so long,
Sure.
and I'm like, I don't know where to put things, where not to put things. Sleeping in my own bed for the first time versus the hotel bed or bed in the village feels a little bit different, and so I'm on day or hour like 13 or whatever it is being home. So I think it'll still take a little bit of time for me to be like, all right, well, I'm now home and here's the routine and getting back into work and all of those things. But yeah, it definitely feels a little bit weird coming home after being gone for so long, because you just feel like you've missed a lot. Although you haven't really missed too much, it feels like you've missed a lot in that it feels like a little bit of a different place too.
Now, how long until she steals that puffy jacket that inflates and
Oh,
deflates?
these jackets, all the stuff that I have is I probably have until I start to unpack, and then we'll see what's
Yeah,
still in my
she
possession and
she already even put
what's
her
not.
name on it, right?
Exactly. There's things that she's already claimed that I'm like, I one thing she's like, well, I don't think you really have much of a choice. But no, in
Oh,
all seriousness, there these are the things where I'm like, they're the items. I'll share them as much as possible, but being able to kind of see and have Olympic team on a lot of these things is also awesome.
because you guys, when you get selected to the official Olympic team,
Yeah.
how much how much gear do they unload on you guys?
Yeah.
I'm sure you got bags and bags and
Yeah,
uh,
so for us at the welcome experience that we had in Milan, before we went to Cortina, and that all of Team USA does, we've got a very nice and generous kit from Nike and from Ralph Lauren, who are the main sponsors. Ralph Lauren outfitted obviously the main opening and closing ceremony kits, and then they also gave us some stuff for the village, as well as all of the other items that we had to wear in the village were Nike. And so we got a good selection of items on top of Under Armour being kind of our performance sponsor from a USA bobsled and skeleton side of things. And so Under Armour also had given us a number of things that we couldn't wear in the village, but we wore at the track and that we wore during media. And so it was a lot of stuff. I've definitely have to do some cleansing of my closet to see, okay, well, of other things that I've
yeah,
cherished for a number of years, what stays, what goes, and what continues to kind of go on the journey. But I think for me, just a lot of things have value, and my wife is going to push me of like, you haven't worn that, you're not going to wear it, get rid of it, make room for all
yeah.
these other things, and it's going to be the right decision to make.
Speaking, so we touched very briefly on the start of this. For a movie like Cool Runnings,
Yeah,
does that inspire you all? Especially for you being an African American,
yeah,
seeing these guys participate in this winter sport, right? Does that inspire you
Yeah,
a
no,
bit? Even though it's maybe like 50-50 true, 50
right.
not, but they took a sport that they didn't belong in
Yeah.
and still competed.
Yeah, I think for me, just whenever I'm able to, from just being black and being an African American standpoint, able to see representation in other areas where we don't spend a lot of time, it speaks volumes to not just who I am and where I want to go and what I want to accomplish, but also what I want to be for other people. And so, being able
Sure.
to think about the team that we've had this year and competing and being one of the few African Americans, just even on the USABS side of things, we're definitely growing in numbers. And again, I've been in the program for about 18 months, almost 2 years now. But for folks that have been in the program for years, they're starting to see how the sport's changing. We're seeing a lot more folks coming in from football and from other sports into bobsled kind of after their primary sport careers. And so just being able to be that representation, that role model, and that inspiration for others, and to be able to share my story of, even for me, like I mentioned, if you were to ask me if I was to be an Olympian, I probably would have said yes, but it would have been down the track and field path. But to
Sure.
feel and to acknowledge and to make the pivot, and what for some may feel like a vulnerable moment of being a bobsledder, because no one grows up in it, can also feel like a being an athlete that's failed at another sport. And that's kind of how some may talk about it, in terms of it feels like this very off space that no one really treads in too much, but when people are in it, they spend a lot of time. And so you see a lot of ex other athletes step into it. But it's been a journey. It's, I think, the journey that inspires others, and it's the stories of how folks get into it. But to answer your question, a long way to answer your question, I think, yeah, the movie has definitely
Yeah.
done a lot for me in terms of how I'm able to see myself and how I'm able to allow others to see themselves in me, in terms of being able to perform in an area where it's not the most common, or you're not seeing a ton of folks that look like you in the sport as well.
Yeah, and I mean you're seeing a change, right? They had a African American woman on the hockey team who
Yeah,
won
yeah,
gold, right? And that's very new. That's very new for for you guys, in general, to be
yeah,
breaking into a sport. And if you're not going to compete in 2030, and believe me, I'm not speculating you will or not,
yeah,
and I don't think anybody. Do you feel like you are now an agent of change, where you can now take your newfound title of Olympian and take that on a tour around to maybe less privileged schools and say,
yeah.
hey, you can do it
Yeah. Yeah,
with a little bit of hard work?
I think I can definitely, with this kind of newer and title and the new letters that I can put behind my name as well, can and have the ability to do that. And some of the things that, when I think about what I'm able to do to give back, will be in areas. And so finding high schools, finding all boys schools, finding going back to Howard County and spending some time at some elementary schools, like I will be doing some of those things to make sure that not just those that are close to me, or those that are in the sports that I've been in, but others start to see what the journey can be like, how the journey can be possible. And really, once you set a goal and you set kind of a target, how you put together a plan to really start to execute that. And it's about being consistent. It's about considering all the elements, and it's also about making sacrifices. And so having folks recognize that it's not going to be an easy journey. No one's going to hand it to you, and you have to earn it, but those things take time and it's possible. And so how and when you make that decision is going to be the difference also between whether you accomplish the thing that you're looking to accomplish, or not as well.
It's kind of funny you bring that up. I'm having the same fight with my 16-year-old son.
Yeah.
He's smart as a wit, but he's lazy as I
Yeah.
can't imagine. And and like you said, everything's a process. And he's a goalie in lacrosse, and he went
Hmm.
to a tournament, didn't do very well,
Yeah.
but colleges still reached out. And I said, it's not always win, loss, do this,
Right.
do that. It's everything. They're looking at you not only, and then I'm sure you saw this with getting
Yeah.
recruited. They're looking for you as a character. And
Yeah.
even for me, as I coach high school baseball, and I watch these parents react the way they do,
Yeah.
there's probably scouts watching your
Seeing that. Yep.
family.
Absolutely.
So, and I think that's what, young ones need to know is, and I say young ones, I'm not, but there is a process, there is hard
There.
work to
Yeah.
be made.
Yeah. There's a process. There's hard work to be made. And again, like you mentioned, and as I was mentioning before, like there's a lot of talented people out there as well. And so when you think about what separates someone from being good to great, it's your personality a lot of times. And so finding a way that not only coaches but others around you can say, this is a person that I want on my team, but this is also a person I can see myself spending time with is what makes a difference. And I think that for me was when I even look at universities, the difference between going to Monmouth University, a smaller Division I school, versus going to a bigger school may have been that you're a number amongst a larger group and you may not actually get to develop those personal relationships. And for me, the folks that I've met through my college experience are some of my best friends to date as well. And those are the coaches that when I mentioned I wasn't just a number on the staff, like we're able to stay connected. They're checking in on me. They're coming across articles and they're sending it to me. They're having athletes that they're maybe are working with that have questions and they're connecting me with them. I'm having questions. I'm going to them. So like it's just a relationship beyond just sport. And I think that's ultimately what makes a difference nowadays when it comes to how successful someone can be at in athletics at a higher level.
And I very much agree with you. Nobody ever handed somebody something and
Yeah.
said, "This is free. Do whatever you can with it."
Yep.
Um, as we start to wind down from this, I have a couple more questions and actually I have a small little quiz for you.
Yeah.
Uh, my last thing to you: what would be your message? Now, I grew up in the Michael Phelps era, right?
Hmm.
Michael Phelps was the greatest athlete ever, at the time, right?
Yeah.
What would be your almost anti Michael Phelps kind of opinion, and what would you say if you were brought into a school and and this is how you would your initial dialogue? What would you tell them going forward? What would be your first opening
Yeah.
bit, your
Huh.
monologue, I guess they call that, of what I'm Bryan, I've been where you are.
Yeah.
What else
It's
comes after that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and yeah, I don't know. I haven't had enough time to
Fair.
think about that, and it's a great question. I think for me, it's an I'm Brian, and it starts with a little bit of my journey of football meets track, and again, competed in track and field for a number of years, but very quick turnaround to trying something new, to taking a chance on myself, to betting on myself, to putting myself in a spot to not only fail but be vulnerable from a coaching standpoint and step into a space to where I am today. And so I think it's a message of vulnerability, it's a message of confidence, it's a message of betting on yourself, and it's a message of kind of commitment into any topic really, whether it be sports, whether it be schooling, whether it be kind of anything that anyone's passionate in, music, of how those pieces start to really come together to build and map out and start to write the story that you want it to be. And at the end of the day, you are the author of your story, and you can make this journey and make that book or make that chapter, whatever it may be in your life, what you want it to be. And at the end of the day, you are the only one in control of that, and you're the only person that can change that as well. And so make it what you want it to be. Have your moments of pausing, have your moments of reflection, and have your moments of also not feeling bad for the decisions you make, whether or not others agree with it as well.
And I think that's always fair, right? But they don't necessarily understand it. That you probably every day for the last whatever amount of years
Yeah.
to get to this point, and you've sacrificed, you put a lot of money into
Yeah.
it, and just to
You're missing
finally get
family
that.
events. Yeah, you're traveling. You're away for weeks at a time. You're dealing with FaceTime calls and phone calls, and sometimes they're only a few minutes. Yeah, so it's a lot, like you said, that goes into, especially when the sport's not as accessible because of the elements and the facilities that are needed to want to be able to accomplish some of these things. And like for me, just even being in track and field, it's like you have it a little bit easier in track and field because everyone runs for the most
Yeah,
part, and there's tracks accessible everywhere, there's fields accessible everywhere. But when you think about trying to step into some of these niche sports where you have to have certain levels of equipment to get what you need to get done, and that I think has been the biggest appreciation that I've had even through the winter sports as a whole, is the fact that like you even have some of your aerial ski jumpers that need water ramps in order to practice some of their tricks. But if they're in a place that doesn't have the water ramps, they're not able to get much done on the actual hill and ramp other than doing some maybe gymnastic stuff on an indoor trampoline to start to practice. So like finding these moments and appreciations for a lot of the winter sports was something that definitely grew on me that I didn't know that I knew that I didn't know prior that I now know now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, I did actually want to ask one follow up question to the bobsled or
Yeah.
bobsleigh. The couple of videos I watched over the last couple of weeks, just trying to get to know your sport because I don't
Yeah.
think I want to come in totally nonchalant about it. The same thing keeps coming up. The nose of this bobsled
Hmm.
is the most top secret area of the entire sled.
Yeah.
Like you don't talk about the nose of the cone of the
Yeah. The nose of
sled.
the sled. Yep.
Is it really that top secret? Is it like an F1 car? You don't
Yeah.
ask questions about the engine or the components.
I think when you think about what it takes to build a competitive sled and even the sleds out there, there's some sleds that are kind of you can buy on the market, such as like a BTC sled with that at one point in time was the newest and the nicest thing, but over time there comes a moment, and for us being in the USA bobsled program, Mark Vandenberg, who also builds our MUSA, which are the made in the USA sleds up in Lake Placid with a few of our partners, the Bowtech as well as Advance, have found ways to get sleds into wind tunnels, to think about aerodynamics, to think about what are the components that they're putting into the sled that make the steering easier, that allow them to make the steering customized to the driver, to think about different things like mounting. So like there's a lot that goes into what makes a sled other than who the driver is. And I think our program has found a way to do that. And we saw that through our performances this year. And Alana Myers Taylor and Kaylee Humphreys finishing with a gold and a bronze, and then also finishing with a bronze medal in the two women races as well at these Olympic Games, to say we have the technology. And when we think about what the Germans have or what other nations have had, it's the technology and the funding, but we're finding a way to really get into those conversations as well. And so over time, technology is technology. It'll become a place where everyone starts to get a little bit onto an even playing field, but the competitive advantage is what is it that you can do with what you have today that others aren't able to, and how do you make sure that at the end of the day you have the best team to put
Yeah.
together. And so when we think about our staff, every single person that's spending time in the garage with us, that's at the track, that's recording corners, and it feels like it may feel like such a little task of capturing sleds, just go through one corner for hours out of day, but you're giving feedback to the coaches. You're thinking about what the pilots need to find those lines, to find that speed, and to also find ways for the sleds to get on and off. And so, yeah, there are a lot of things that go on inside the front of the sled and just within the sled in general in terms of equipment that separate good from great and greatness from awesomeness, as well, in addition to the drivers that are behind those things as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you explained that because I couldn't understand. It's stringing a couple paddles at the end of the
Yeah.
day, but apparently it's not.
No, no. And that's where, again, when you think, like you said, even F1, there's things in rule books that allow you to push the envelopes. There's the creative nature of being mechanics and thinking about what you can do and how you can interpret this a little bit differently and what that means from the material that you're putting in, and why are you picking this versus that, and why are you using this aspect versus this. And so like all those things become the conversations that go way beyond my mind, but are the reasons why we are able to build such great sleds and compete at the level that we are across the world.
So as we're wrapping up, not a so serious question. Are you tempted? And this is just a funny question. You can answer it however you want. Are you just going to walk into Chipotle or make an online order and go Olympian Brian?
Oh, that would I wish, and it's funny you mentioned Chipotle because that was the first place that I went yesterday after getting back home, was to Chipotle, and that's the one restaurant that I think has fueled my journey from being a 180-pound track and field athlete on the heavier side to the 207, 208 bobsledder that I am now, of finding ways to eat clean but also eat really good food. And so yeah, I probably will find a moment through some of this ordering and DoorDash to add in the Olympian title there and just have a little bit of
Well,
fun.
at least once or twice, right?
Yeah,
Just for
no, for
kind of
sure. And
your.
maybe one of these days I'll get my own Chipotle bowl or Chipotle sponsoring my name for a little bit.
All right, so I have a bunch of quiz questions.
Yeah,
This is
I'll
not
do
to
my
fool you
best.
up. They're
I was gonna
not
say I'll
the
do my
hardest
best.
ever, and they're not the most well-researched question you can ever think of. But I thought it would be a little fun to do a little Olympic quiz.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I'm going to start off When do you what? How much history do you know about the Olympics and the sport? Have you researched it, or are you kind of been like,
Not a ton.
ooh,
I've been a spectator versus an avid kind of fan of the Olympics and even the sport of bobsleigh, and that's one of those things, like, even being in the sport, there's things that I learn every day just from hearing the conversations that others are having that you would think that someone at this level would know, but there's just so much that there's
sure,
so much history and
sure.
there's so much knowledge that it's impossible to gain in such a short amount of time.
So here's the first one. You ready?
I'm as ready as I will
Again,
be.
super, super.
Hopefully multiple choice.
Yeah. Oh, no. Well, we can make it a multiple choice if you
All
want
right.
to. But I super, sought out this information. Not really. So the first question is, when was the first bobsled race ever? And I'm gonna give you a couple choices:
Yep.
1920, 1898, or 1907.
I'd say probably 1907. I
Wrong.
It's
It's okay.
probably 1898.
Yeah, it is 18.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was looking. I was like, it's not the 20s. It's definitely before that. But the 18s feel so far away.
Yeah, right. It's like so far, and I figured if I just thought to myself, maybe I'll throw in another 19, just because you're thinking, okay, 19's got to be right.
Yeah.
Um, when was the first Winter Olympics? And would you like?
Also the 19, because this was the 16th Olympics, I think. 16th
Yep,
of the 20 something Winter Olympics, and you go every 4 years. So the first one was over 100. So I'd probably say the 19 teens.
you're close. 1924. You're
At
close.
least I'll know these things after.
Like I said, this was a quick Google search. I
Yeah.
said I'll throw these in there. So I'm gonna throw you a little ollie loop, and it's not, no pun intended for this next question. True or false? Basketball is a Winter Olympic sport,
False.
and it's misleading, right? Because when we play in high
Yeah.
school, basketball's in the winter
Yeah, it's a
season,
winter.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So last one. Again, this is not to fool you up. You're gonna get this one very easily. All the is Cool Runnings, the movie,
Yep.
a 100% true story.
Yes.
What parts do you think are true?
I think the story of the team, I think for me, the story of the team and the country of Jamaica and what they had to go through to get through the games to be that first sled are all true facts. There's probably things in that movie that are not depicted accurately, such as things like the bathtub and moving right to left, and that being the way that folks steer. But I think that was even some that folks today are like, oh, I didn't know there was steering in the sled. I thought it was kind of like push and go. But what am I missing?
You're missing the actually Olympic team, the official one, were all military officers.
Mm,
So the things, they were all sprinters, were kind of embellished.
gotcha.
That they were all sprinters, but they were, and then a
Oh,
lot
they were
of
in the military.
yeah,
Gotcha.
but still the story's there.
Yeah.
I 100% believed it until, like, when of course somebody spoiled it through either TikTok or
Yeah.
Instagram with
Something.
the real true story of
Yeah.
it. I still, and I just want to refer to this movie if you have a few more minutes.
Yeah. I'm good. Yeah.
I still get choked up at the end when that the sled tipping, when you see
Mm-hmm.
it on like a TV screen, is the
Yeah.
actual footage
Yeah.
of them going.
You have crashing. Yep.
As a bobsledder, do you feel like, I mean, they were on an Olympic record pace, and their sled fell apart.
Yeah.
How much is that like a old wives' tale to you guys, that you're going to be on this great Olympic pace, and then boom, disaster's going to strike?
I think it's one of those things where it's sport. And so I don't think something like that is even too far fetched. And we had an experience at our world championship last year with one of the heats where one of the German teams, as the pilot was loading, something happened and they kicked a hole through the front of the sled. And I believe it was the same pilot that just won Olympic gold, Johannes Lochner, in both the 2-man and 4-man, kicked a hole in the sled. They ended up canceling that entire heat up in Lake Placid and throwing out all those results because of the fact that I think they were like, that was unfair competition grounds. But it's something like that where it's that probably happens once every like 100, maybe 1,000 runs, but it happened at the World Championship as they were in medal contender positioning. That ended up, by throwing out that heat, it actually allowed them to still get a medal because now it balances out where those others made up ground during that heat as well.
Who
So
is your
it
favorite? Sorry, guy. No,
go ahead.
please finish.
I was gonna say, so it's just one of those things that I think equipment malfunctions happen more than you think. But again, when you think about the teams that you have behind you, it's making sure that every nut and every bolt is screwed tightly, the runners are on the right way, that you're checking the steering mechanism when you're putting it down, that you're making sure that everything's good to go. But that's why when you think about the success of this, it's not just the team that's on the hill and on the line, but there's so many more folks behind the scenes that get us to where we're going. So
100% agree. Who was your favorite character in Cool Runnings? And you can just describe them. You don't have to edit because
yeah,
I'm
I
not very
think
good at
I
names
think
either.
for me the scene that is always directly in my head is as he's in the, and I'm blanking on his name, but as he's in the mirror and he's kind of reading himself out his affirmations um around you're I'm gonna butcher this a little bit, but just kind of going through of like there's no batter motherfucker or whatever it may be, excuse my language,
Yul
and
Brenner.
he's going, yep. So having that moment of having that kind of confidence and stepping in and saying those words to himself, I think was one that sticks with me when I think about that movie.
Well, and speaking of that scene, I think right after that scene, actually, Yul Brenner's expect because he was wiped out at the race, and
Hmm.
then now this is only his only way into the Olympics, and he shows Sanka the picture of Buckingham Palace as his next big purchase, and they're like, "That's Buckingham Palace, buddy."
Yep. Yep. Yep, and then they
Uh,
got their lucky egg. So that was a good movie.
yes.
I haven't seen it in a little bit of time, but I've seen lots of references to it as we got closer to the games, and those Jamaican athletes even that we spent some time with on tour last, or not on tour but on the NAC, have had a lot of success this year too, that have allowed them to really climb to the level they are, and I'm excited to see what they'll be able to do in the years ahead too. It's a younger team, but with great coaching and with great people.
So where do you see you in 2030? Is this going to be another? Because it starts in 2029, 2028. Are you ready to? And it's got to be all that energy, and now you're just crashed, right?
Yeah,
You're like, ugh, do I want to go
yeah,
through this misery?
yeah. I think it's it's more of a, I think at this, like, coming after the games, everyone from a physical and is kind of burnt and fried at both ends of the candle, almost, where it's like this is going to be a nice time for people to not only recharge but just kind of reflect on the year. But when you think about 2030, a lot of the work for folks, some may take the year off, but a lot of the work for some folks may start as soon as the next season as well. And so it's going to be a year of rebuilding in terms of the program. But when I go back to mentioning things like the teams that have the most success and that I've started to learn to appreciate more in this sport are the teams that spend the most time together. And part of being in the most time is not just physically being together, but it's also the reps that you're able to get and the training that you're able to get into the off season. And so for us in our US program, we don't have and I think I like this at least a little bit better, I think, at the current moment of like, you don't have the pilots that select their teams and focus on just five guys throughout the year. We
Yeah.
go through our push championships in the fall. We pick, and through those push championships, pretty much form the top 12 or so athletes. And that's how the committee then looks at all that data and assesses who are the best folks to be on the World Cup tour this year versus some other nations may have, excuse me, a, a pool of five, six, seven athletes overall, and with those athletes, they're kind of mixing and mingling. So they're able to every single week, every single race, every single training session, get those reps with the same team. So when you get to the Olympics or get to some of these competitions, you've gotten to a point where they've almost perfected their craft. Versus where sometimes where we have so much talent in the U.S. that it comes a little bit of a downfall because there's so many pieces moving in,
Yeah,
moving out. Someone's taking a year off, another person's coming in. That person that took a year off wants their spot back, but there's the newer generation of talent, whatever it may be that goes into all these components. But so I think for me, it's going to be a decision coming around like, hey, what is it we want to do? As I think about my wife and us starting a family, where does that put us
yeah.
in 2030? And is this something where I or we can kind of make the decision where we're on tour for again a number of months and away from home and what that may look like. But I have teammates that have done it, I have coaches that have done it and have shown that it's possible. And so I think it's just more of it's assessing and seeing where myself from a personal and as well as a professional and a working career standpoint are at the time to make that decision.
So as we wrap up, do you have anything to tell anybody or tell people, knuckleheads decided who tuned in? Um,
Yeah,
what is your lasting thought, memory, experience? Because regardless of how silly it may seem on like a Chipotle order, you are an Olympian. That
yeah,
is a fact, and now you can use that, right?
yeah,
You can now use that title. I am, the
yeah. Bryan
Winter Olympic
Sosoo, Winter
Olympian.
Olympian. Yeah,
Yeah. What message would you want to convey to everybody? Like, because the Winter Olympics come very, very suddenly, and they are
yeah,
on, and they're on every hour. But what is it that you, Brian, want to get out to the world?
yeah. I think for me, it's with anything the commitment, the dedication, the passion you have towards anything that you do is going to make the difference between whether you succeed or fail. And also, the biggest blocker in whether you succeed or fail at whatever task you have at hand is going to be you. And so, when you think about what it takes to achieve the goals that you have, putting your mind to it, being confident in your ability, or being confident in being self aware enough of where there is opportunities, finding the team behind you to support and build those opportunities, and then getting it done because it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to always be able to get it done yourself. And if you think that you're going to be able to, it's sometimes having that moment of vulnerability that separates the good from the great. And so I think that's a little bit of a message that I'd like to be able to send out of when I think about again athletics or any sort of kind of endeavor that folks go on is how do you set your mind? How do you set a plan? How do you plan to execute that plan? And then how do you actually start to pull those pieces together?
And I 100% agree. That's, as a baseball coach, that that's what we try to tell all these
Yeah,
young boys coming in. Brian, I want to thank you so very much for coming
absolutely.
on. I do want to keep in touch and see
Yeah.
where you land, and that way maybe we
Thank
can
you.
follow the journey a little bit more if you decide to uh, go on and do this again. Um,
Absolutely.
it's a great pleasure of mine to meet you, talk to you. Very easy, very well to talk to.
Thank you.
Because I would have came on here like, yeah, I'm in. I'm
Yeah, we're
Olympian.
like, see this
Yeah, yeah,
right here. Yeah, no, it's a fun experience, but I'm big on you can't take yourself too seriously as well. But I think everything you said as well, and I've enjoyed this conversation resonates of being an Olympian is something that no one can ever take away from me, and it's something that not only that I've worked hard for it and put together, but there's so many that have also been on this journey that allowed me to get here. And so I do also think of it sometimes as a team win. And I had put a post out the other day, I think just yesterday, and it was actually Layla Edwards from the women's hockey team that had said something of this nature on an interview where it's like I made the roster but my family made the team.
yes, it's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Um, a tradition of the Orioles has been every time there's Olympics, they bring the Olympians who represented Maryland onto
Yeah.
the field. You know that. Is that something you're going to look forward to?
I will look forward to it. And I'm not a huge baseball fan, and I think I've only been to maybe a single Orioles game in my life. Just even after finishing high school, I moved up to school in New Jersey, and I've been here since. But fully represent Maryland still from a state, and so I will absolutely be looking forward to being able to get there, and maybe it'll
Yeah,
be an Orioles and Yankees game or something of that nature as well, and I can have my in laws and family come down also.
yeah, exactly. Well, thank you, Brian. I know you got things to do today
Thank you. I
and life
appreciate
to
your
catch up
time.
on and everything else. But I do appreciate carving out this amount of time to bring your story to the forefront because I was super excited a few weeks ago when I found out you were from Maryland.
Yeah,
You are from the bobsled team. And I mean, I was like spinning my head, like, who?
yeah, yeah.
But
I
again,
appreciate it.
thank you so very much. I appreciate it. And hopefully we can keep in touch over the next couple of years and see where we can do a follow up with you and where you
Sounds good.
are heading.
Perfect. I appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you, Brian.
All right, take care.
Hey, it's Ed from the WTF Ed Sports Show. Follow me. Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Do it now. Do it now. Now.